everybody, and welcome back to Movie Fight Club, where we duke it out about whether Jaws is good or not. I am Mandy, and Jaws is the most boring movie alive. If movies can be alive.
Yeah, alive is a word, but fine, we will take it. Hi, I'm Matthew, and I love Jaws. I think Jaws is a great film. I'm sad I'm not watching Jaws now, frankly. That's how good it is.
But you did just get to rewatch it for this.
I
so
did,
yay.
I did. And the first, half hour of the documentary about Jaws.
Oh, look at you doing research and homework and stuff.
Yeah. Because Jaws is awesome, so you want to swim in it, as it were.
Why don't you tell us about Jaws?
Jaws is a 1975 film directed by Steven Spielberg. It was a huge commercial success, making over $400 million at the box office. It won 3 Academy Awards and was also nominated for the award for Best Picture. Jaws is credited with starting the modern blockbuster concept, opening in huge numbers at cinemas at once with a big marketing push, as well as being a prime example of new Hollywood high-concept films that entertained whilst using techniques from European and Asian cinema.
Indeed.
Yes, and it's a great film. I mean, it's got all this, and there's all this stuff that I could talk about with it. Like, it invented the modern blockbuster and the summer season, and there's all these other things that it took from places and turned into a great delivery of a, lasting movie and the impact of it and all the filmmakers who came after, and it started the careers of these great actors and all of this. It in itself is a really good film, which it should not be.
I mean, okay, but it's a movie that proclaims to be about a shark that doesn't actually have a shark in it for most of the movie.
And isn't that the point of the shark? You don't see sharks until they attack.
I mean, but in this movie, you've got a shark that's eaten at least 2 people and a dog, and you still haven't actually seen it yet.
Yeah, it's a horror film. It's setting up the horror of it.
I don't know. I wasn't horrified by it. I was once again surprised by the PG rating because there is a lot of blood for a boring movie. But honestly, I was just watching it like, when is something actually going to happen?
So you weren't emotionally invested in it, is what you're saying?
I was not.
Because it's that tension and terror that's supposed to keep you going. And if you're not into that, then no, it won't grab you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it didn't. It was like, at one point I paused it and I was like, oh my God, I'm only an hour through it. Like, I'm still only halfway through this movie. Like, I really legitimately thought it should have been almost over at that point.
Right.
I had been sitting there for so long watching this movie about a shark that doesn't have a shark in it, and it was only halfway over.
Because the thing that's really clever compared to other stuff is this sort of, it is borrowing B-movie tropes and sort of, bad slasher monster type, movies that have come before it. Except they're always about the poor victims. And is one of them going to survive? And how are they going to get away from this thing that's hunting them? Whereas this is about the person who can do something about it. And what they do. And it could go a route where it does a whole, man is the actual monster because he's actually after commerce and greed rather than just doing what's natural. It doesn't go hard on that message. It lets that message sit with you and you get to see it. But it is following the person who is the shark's equal. Equal's probably not the right word, but it's not following the pretty blonde who's not wearing a bra and desperately trying to escape from the thing that's hunting them.
All right, I'll give you that one.
So it's setting up already something you don't normally get in these sorts of films. And again, this is the sort of turning of blurring the lines over who you're following and what the story is going to be, making it a little bit more interesting to watch, which came with films in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And you're right, you don't see the shark for most of it. And do I need to discuss the fact that the shark didn't work, the mechanical shark?
No, I mean, I know it didn't work, but then they should have done something differently with the movie.
So they found different ways to deal with it. And rather than showing you a shark, having a big shark that may or may not deliver on its lifelikeness, they start using barrels to imply that the shark is near. They start scaring you just with the cellist. You know, it is a cellist playing the notes E and F back and forth.
Darn it.
Exactly.
Darn it.
It is doing the scare.
Well, yeah, so okay, let's talk about the music for a second. I mean, you do get the great John Williams theme at the beginning. Like, everybody knows this theme. And I know we had, I went back and listened to part of our PCD episode, and we had a listener at that point say that they went to see it in the theater with their sister, and that opening riff was scary enough that her sister left.
Excellent.
Didn't even stay and watch the movie. So that's great music. I'll give it that. But 80% of the music that was playing on the screen during the big showdown with the three men on the boat sounded like this jaunty, I'm going on an adventure. It's like all high-pitched and piccolos. And I'm like, it doesn't match.
And that's what they have to do to get the rating as low as possible. Again, you know, trying to invent, or they weren't trying to invent, there was a new thing coming out of this, and it's keeping that rating as low as possible, which means as many people as possible can buy tickets for it. Because obviously as the rating jumps up, you're cutting chunks off your audience, particularly people who like going to the cinema. So they have to sort of get the, do I mean censors? The ratings board. They have to get them to accept the film more. And so they can have moments of violence if the rest of the film has not got you nails into your palm, scared of everything that's going on. So you have to have one to be able to get the other.
I don't like that answer.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's the only one you're getting.
I understand it's the only one I'm getting, but I don't like it. And I think that a movie should stand on its own merits and not cater to the Motion Picture Association of America.
And their clandestine ways.
Right? I mean, there's also, like, I get that this is a very popular piece of history for us. It spawned some really, really trashy movies as well. Like, we wouldn't have Sharknado if we didn't have Jaws.
No.
Does the world really need Sharknado, Matthew?
Let me see if I can count the number of people who love the Sharknado films and keep telling me about the Sharknado films. And it's very few, because no one in their right mind likes those films. They are terrible films that people should not watch. So
is Jaws.
And Jaws is a great film because it's delivering. It's really hard to watch these days. It's really hard because that theme is so famous. The shark fin in the water is so famous. Some of the moments of it are so famous. But certainly when it came out, it hadn't been done in this way. You went to Malta or somewhere and you filmed in a tank, anything set on water, and you did it in safe, very easy to control environments. And this was on the ocean. So they had huge amounts of time wasted trying to deal with just being on the ocean. Then they had a mechanical shark they were developing for it. So this wasn't special effects as we might think of as special effects. This was a practical mechanical effect being driven underwater to deliver scares that it works better because they couldn't show it, because they couldn't get the shark working. So they had to figure out other stuff to do. And most of that is using the implication of the shark rather than the actual monster. And that, again, has driven the way monster movies are created for years now.
So it sounds like a lot of what you love about this movie is not the movie itself, but kind of the behind-the-scenes information about the movie.
Well, the behind-the-scenes information is easy. And that's our starting point. 10 minutes into me arguing for 30 minutes why it's a great film. Because let's talk some of those performances. And some of the set pieces that you get from the actors. It's one of those weird things, and we've talked about this on other films, that as we've gotten older, we've sympathized with different characters in films than and TV shows than we did when we were younger. And it's interesting, again, listening back to that PCD episode where we talked about Jaws, and I talked about Matt Hooper sort of standing up to Quint and having this the typical machismo that he would come at him with, the bravura of, I know what I'm doing on the ocean and you don't, you're a young pup. And I was very pleased with seeing Matt Hooper standing up to him and giving as good as he got, even in a slightly pathetic way, crushing the plastic cup compared to Quint crushing the metal can and so on. Do you know I really like Quint this time?
Really? He got on my nerves. I mean, He's basically a poor man's Captain Ahab, right?
I don't think so.
Really?
And that has always been the reading in my head. I think it's an easy reading because he's a slightly pirate type guy going after a big fish.
Right.
Whereas the other one was pirate guy going after a big mammal. Fine. I did realise as I was saying it, I was about to walk in saying something very wrong, so I thought I'd correct. I don't think he's desperate with getting this shark. Sharks in general are his thing.
Okay.
Because of everything that we hear. But I don't think he's expecting this hunt to be the conclusion of it for him. This is just another job. Mm. And if you're good at something, you don't do it for free.
I mean, he's kind of an asshole about it.
Yeah.
And the town itself is full of stupid assholes, so I guess that tracks. But I don't know. I don't know if it's his performance or if it's the character specifically that I don't like, because his accent was weird. Him singing the songs was weird. The way he got drunk and, they were showing off their scars was weird. I don't know. It didn't grab me.
And it's interesting because it's the small moments getting under the character. And maybe it's because I've now watched it 2 or 3 times for a podcast to watch it more intensely, that you start noticing the small stuff. And it's the points where he stops all that. The introduction of the shark cage. When the anti-shark cage, sorry, it's not a shark cage, it's an anti-shark cage. Right. Is being brought through, and he looks at it, and he's been mocking all the gadgets and gizmos and everything that Matt Hooper's doing, and he's already giving it all that. And he sees the shark cage, and he asks him about it, and he says, cage goes in the water, you go in the water, shark goes in the water. And he just walks away singing. And it's really intimidating, because, he can look at that, and he's like, that's not going to stop a shark that wants to get you. So it's an absolute waste of space. But he's not doing the big performance with it. He's not doing I'm going to mock you for this thing. This thing's going to get you killed. And I'll let it happen. Because it might get me a fish.
And some money.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really interesting character because it's so intimidating at those times. I mean, his speech about being on the Indianapolis and in the water, which is a wonderful moment in the film. It is a truly great moment. But I think it's because I couldn't remember the scene where Matt Hooper talks about being really rich.
Does he talk about being really rich?
When they go out on his boat. Schneider and he go out on his boat.
Oh, well, I mean, Brody asks him, are you rich? And he just says, yeah.
He says, yeah. And there is a real implication that he has come from money. There is quite a thing that he is very intelligent and very capable, clearly, but sort of gentleman explorer-y type way. He had to go and do something, and he loves sharks, so he can go and spend all his money doing oceanography stuff and getting a qualification in it and turning it into a job and so on. So actually watching it now and going, yeah, he is a little out of his depth here. This is one of those things of it's the real world and it's the sort of, Playboy's not the right word, but, someone playing at it in some ways. Finally.
There's a difference between seeing a shark in an aquarium and seeing a shark in the ocean.
Yeah. It's got that sort of thing going on with it. So when you then come up against Quint, who knows all this stuff, who has clearly never studied in his life, just has worked at it and figured out sharks and understands them very deeply. It's a really interesting comparison. And I like it in both ways, that neither of them actually back down. They're both trying their thing and neither of them work. And it's in the end, it's the chief of the police who hates the water who ends up saving the day.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that it ends up being kind of Quint and Hooper in contrast to Brody, because the two of them know what they're doing on a boat with the knots and the barrels, and so they're working together while Brody's just throwing chum in the water, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end, like you said, Brody is the one who ends up saving the day.
And even that, the way Quint treats Brody, because he's not nice to him, but he's giving all of this lip to Hooper and winding him up and being quite an arse to him. And Brody, he's sort of giving the menial jobs, but telling him the things. But even when something does go wrong, when Brody pulls the wrong rope and lets down all the gas canisters, Chekhov's gas canisters, he does, at the very end of the scene, he just says to Brody, Chief, you just check with me which rope you need to pull.
Yeah.
And he still said, you don't know what you're doing here. I'll look after you. There's a real implication of, I'm not dressing you down here, but you need to be careful, and this is not your place.
You really do like Quint, don't you?
It was really interesting watching and going, actually, there's a lot to this character underneath the really high level, the thing when the wife turns up and he starts telling the limerick that he liked and all of that kind of thing, which is great and is fun and, and it would be an interesting character in any film. No, not interesting. It would be a fun character in any film. But then when you couple it with some of these quieter moments and some of these, more intense things that he does, it's quite interesting. I don't think I'd ever quite picked up on some of the stuff he was doing.
Okay. All right. I mostly just thought he was weird. Clearly, I am not as highbrow as you are on this one.
Well, it's a very highbrow film. It's a fish trying to eat people. It's, it's a thinking person's fish film.
Right? The thinking person's fish. I love it. Love it. You know what I did think? Have you ever watched the TV show Bones?
Yes, I have.
So, Matt Hooper in this, spitting image of Hodgins.
He is, yes.
I was, I couldn't place it the whole time I was watching it. I was like, he reminds me of somebody, and I don't get it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it came to me with the curly hair and the way that he talks. I was like, dude, the guy who plays Hodgins totally based his character off of Matt Hooper.
Possibly, actually, because it's got a lot in that whole rich thing and stuff in common.
Yeah. Rich guy just doing what he wants to do because he can.
Yeah.
He's interested in it, so he turns it into a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tracks.
King of the boat.
King of the lab.
And it's funny because you said exactly the same thing 4 years ago. And I made the same joke 4 years ago. But what's really funny is that Catherine said exactly the same thing watching it this time as well. My wife,
Really?
My wife, as we're watching it, she's like, he's really like the guy from Bones.
Yeah. See, I didn't re-listen to the entire episode. Just the very, very beginning part, because I couldn't remember if I had liked it or not back then. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of listened to get up to that point.
It's a hard listen. Our audio quality is not there at all.
Just episode 15.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good. How many times have you talked about Jaws on a podcast? Is this the third one now?
This is the second.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. You didn't do it on Nature Finds a Way.
No.
You just listened to them.
I listened to them talk about it, and it was one of their very early ones as well.
Oh, okay.
And it's great. It's so fascinating. I think we've shouted them out before, but it's fascinating to hear. We'll pop a link in the show notes. Really interesting to hear the sort of sciencey stuff behind it, and some of the because that's one. I think the first time they did something for Shark Week, and obviously every year they do at least one or two shark films for Shark Week, but talking about sharks in that level of detail, both as a comparison to the film and just sharks in general. So that's always interesting to take in. Again, I think they would comment on how different they sound now compared to back then. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Honestly, I'm sure you have a million other reasons why this is a great movie, but I can't get past being bored and just not invested. It didn't give me anything to hold on to.
Okay. I don't know how I argue that point.
I know. It's not great. It's like, I mean, I'm not coming in saying their performances were terrible. The cinematography is great, and you're right. They had a couple, I remember the one scene that you kept talking about in our previous episode, when Brody's on the beach, and I don't know what they call it, but
Say it.
He's there.
You know what it's called? Say it.
I don't know what it's called. What's it called?
It's dolly zoom.
It's dolly zoom. I caught that this time, and I was like, that's actually really cool. And then there was another moment when Roy Schneider saw the shark for the first time. We saw the shark and he saw the shark, and the way they did that moment was really good. But that's two really nice moments in a movie that did not need to be 2 hours long because there wasn't even a shark in the movie.
Okay.
That's all. And we could talk about how stupid the people are in that town.
But that's part of the plot. That's part of the quality of the film. Is, the fact that don't be like the mayor from Jaws is a sort of, common reference, particularly in these times in which we live. Again, talks to the
struggled
lasting...
with that too. Like, I was remembering thinking when we watched this 5 years ago that there's no way people would actually be like this in real life. And, and we had a global pandemic, right? And I realized people are just stupid assholes all the time. But I don't want to see that in my movies.
Okay. Do you want to swap which side we're on for this film? Do you want to give it a few minutes to go in the other way?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Because I could argue it.
I'm sure you can. I'd love to hear your arguments.
And you could defend it? I'm sure you can defend it.
You've already defended it, though.
Yeah, but you could start talking about the family and the interesting things. Can I?
Yeah. This
is just the most schlocky B movie that does not deserve any of the credit given to it. It's ripping off rubbishy films that came before it. It's doing cinematography that is trying to be clever, that is actually eye-rollingly bad. If you saw this in any other film, any non-Steven Spielberg film, the fact that they're setting off to go hunt a shark and you've got a zoom shot going through a shark's mouth to show you the fish, the boat going off, it's awful. It's just trying to go for the lowest common person who could possibly see this to grab some bucks rather than actually trying to deliver something of quality.
Why didn't I say any of that? I would not have been able to pull that off with a straight face. This is the worst episode of Movie Fight Club ever because I have utterly failed.
And this was the interesting thing with Jaws coming up, because it's like, Jaws is a legitimately great film, and it's got that scene with the boy mimicking his father. How could you hate that film? Because it's sappy, pappy rubbish, trying to just go to the heartland of America and steal their hard-earned money just into cinema dollars. The cynical nature of the movie business, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I've got to up my game.
It was really interesting watching it this time and trying to really get into how could you slate this film and how can you defend this film? Because even defending it is quite hard because it is just a great film. Like,
yeah.
It's just so
and
well
I went into it, for some reason, I thought I was the fanatic this week. And so I went into it like, I don't actually remember what I thought about this movie, but I was watching it and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm enjoying this. Although I did legitimately have the moment of, oh my God, it's only halfway over. Like, that actually happened. And then when I was done and I realized I had to argue against it, I was like, I can't.
Yeah, because it's so well made. Like, and so there is a shot where they're going off in the boat and the shot is through the window, through the bone of the shark's mouth, the shark's jaw, as they're going off into the distance. And in a lesser film, in a film or a TV show or something, I'd be like, oh, get lost. Come on, we get the imagery, thank you very much. But in this, it's like, oh, it's so intense. Ooh, yeah, they're going off into the mouth of the beast. Ooh.
Yeah.
Because you just give the film so much credit by that point, because the characters are interesting. And part of that is they were allowed to ad-lib so much, because they knew they were having to fill in a lot of space that the shark wasn't there, so...
I didn't expect to fail so spectacularly so early in the run of our show. It's freaking episode 4, and I couldn't do it.
It's a learning experience. That's what this is.
So, oh well. Jaws is a great movie, guys.
It's really good, isn't it? And there's stuff that I was picking up that I hadn't even noticed before. You know, the very beginning, after the first attack, and he says to, like, his deputy, find out what else is going on the water today for me. And the deputy turns up a bit later and he's like, oh, the scouts are out there. They're doing their mile swim badge or something. I couldn't tell them to come back in because there's no phones out there. And it's so deadpan. You don't even see that it's a joke. Yeah. Yeah, and in trying to watch for all the details and see, like, okay, what is going on in this film? What can we talk about? There's all this sort of stuff in there it's really interesting. That's really interesting.
Honestly, so I know I based my whole fake argument around it being boring because there's not a shark in it, but that's what actually makes it such a good movie. The shark's not in it and you're still scared.
Yeah.
And you're still, like, on the edge of your seat. Like, don't go in the water.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
And the thing of, you know, I made the flippant joke that you're actually being scared by the cellist, which I think we made on the last one as well, or someone made on a podcast, you know.
Yeah.
But the orchestra is not there unless the shark is there. The orchestra is 100% a stand-in for the shark. So when there's the fake shark attack, there's no orchestra. And you mentioned like all the adventure scene, adventure type music, but that's only there when the shark's attacking them. You don't get that through the Indianapolis stuff or any of that. There's only that sort of non-diegetic music when the shark is attacking.
Oh, that's
and
great.
it's such a nice cue that when you then go to the lagoon and the shark is attacking, you know it's real. And whether you've sort of clocked it or not, the orchestra's there, so it's a real shark attack.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's just, even on the small levels like that, like, oh, this is really well made. It's really hard to have a go at it, and I'm really sorry it was you.
Well, if one of us was going to fail, at least it was me.
But I don't think, you know, if it had been fully reversed, I could make 2 comments over the course of 10 seconds, but to argue it for half an hour?
Yeah. Well, and you keep looking at me expectantly like I'm supposed to keep talking, and there's just nothing else to say. Like, I'm done. Failed.
I thought you were going to come with a whole thing, like all these sharks that were killed because of this film. People were scared to go in the sea, and think of the hours of enjoyment of swimming they lost because of this film. That's what this film was robbed from the world. Enjoyment.
There was the slight possibility that I was going to talk about, like, the devastation of vilifying such an important piece of our ecosystem, of our marine ecosystem. But I didn't go there. Because I didn't think, 1, I could do it in a straight face, or 2, actually expand upon it if you asked me to.
That's way too much homework, that one. There was a joke on Twitter the other day, someone being like, every so often there's like an extinction level event, and sharks go, oh, hey, look at that. And they just keep evolving and keep doing their thing.
Yeah.
They eat, they sleep, and they make baby sharks.
Yes, they do.
Is that it? Or they eat, they swim, and they make baby sharks. And even that.
All I remember was the make baby sharks part.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are machines.
Okay.
I mean, I think we're done on this one.
Yes. I think we are. Are we going to do polls? Are we going to ask people what they think?
I mean, I don't know what we would ask. I mean, is there anybody out there who can legitimately argue that Jaws is a bad movie? Maybe? I
mean, there probably are. There probably are people who watched it and were legitimately bored, but they're not very smart, are they? They're not enjoying this highbrow stuff like you and me, right?
The thinking man's fish movie.
I'm just trying to get them to come and argue. If only we knew someone who loved arguing who could come and argue this film.
Oh, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, yes.
All right. There may or may not be a poll about this one. How about that? Matthew, where can people find us?
We are all over the internet, any social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter type place. You can find us at Eloquent Gushing. You can find me, I'm at Matthew Vose. And you can find us on Patreon, where if you like what we do, you can support us from just $1 a month and get access to all kinds of exciting, cool things, as well as knowing in your heart that you are supporting wonderful people making wonderful content that you love.
And you can find me on Twitter, not talking about Jaws, at Mandy K. That's MandiKaye.
Okay, so this was a classic from the AFI Top 100, which means our next film has to be a random recommendation from a friend and listener. Shall we see what we get?
Let's do it.
Interview with the Vampire. Should we find out who's going to be Fanatic?
Spin the spinner.
Spin. There we go. Oh, I haven't got noise turned on, so it's not doing the noise this time. It is going to be... You are the Fanatic.
Okay.
And I have to not like the Interview with the Vampire.
How do you not like something that's got Brad Pitt with long, luxurious locks?
It's got Tom Cruise with long, luxurious locks.
All right. All right. So we have our next movie.
That's our next movie, but before that, you will have a special secret episode 5. So we may post stuff up on social media to talk about before episode 5 gets recorded, and then episode 6 coming back in 4 weeks with interview with the vampire.
And remember, the first rule of Movie Fight Club is to tell all your friends and family about Movie Fight Club.